and welcome to our new series, Squad Up. Now we are going into episode 1, but first I want you to understand what we're going to be talking about over the next couple weeks. We're going to be talking about what it looks like to be a part of a community that is good for you, and helps you become the best version of yourself. Someone who values you and others. And that's what it means to squad up, to go and find a community that you know is good and probably what's best for you. So this week we're going to be talking about a community that I don't think is going to be surprising for you to hear is a good community to be a part of, but one that is so necessary, but sometimes can be hard to find a good one. And that's being in the community of God's family. You see, when we are in God's family, we're not just somebody who is Christian, we are somebody who is welcomed to be a part of that community, to help shape that community, to help care for that community. We are loved for exactly who we are, but we will be challenged to be the best version of ourselves that we can be. And that's why God's family is a good community. It's a good community when it's done well. And we need to understand what it means to do community well. You see, I've experienced all kinds of community in my years, especially within the church, and I've experienced good ones and bad ones. You see, in college, I experienced a really bad community, a community that was supposed to be centered around Christ, but I slowly found that this community actually was centered around judgment, expectation, and if you didn't meet those expectations, then you would be ridiculed, made fun of, or ashamed. And it took me a while to recognize how unhealthy that was. And it wasn't how they treated me that made me recognize it, but it was how they were treating one of my friends in this group. I remember sitting there, watching them make fun of my friend, their friend, for a choice she made. And it broke my heart. And I was like, this isn't a community I want to be a part of. And I wonder how many of you have experienced communities within the church that are like that as well. And if you have, I'm really sorry. Because that is not what a community centered around God's family is supposed to be about. No. It's supposed to be about love. It's supposed to be about kindness. It's supposed to be about valuing each other, seeing what each and every one of us bring to the table, loving us for exactly where we are at, but challenging us to be better. Now, I do find myself lucky now because I do have a good community like that. And it took a while to find, because sometimes it can be hard to find a community where you are comfortable enough to be open and honest about where you're at. But a few years ago, I found myself in a small group. And I joined this small group just because I wanted to be diving into the Bible more and learning a little bit more about God during the week and not just on Sundays. But what I didn't recognize is I was joining a group of women that would soon become some of my best friends. That would become a community that I look forward to seeing each and every week. That would become a community that I don't just see once a week to talk about God, but that I actually share life with. People that encourage me and love me, care for me and challenge me, praise me and celebrate me, and also call me out when I need to be called out. But the difference in this community that I found and the one that I had in college is that it's centered around God. It's centered around the relationship that each and every one of us have with Him, and then using that to figure out how we have relationship with each other, how we love one another. And so that's what I want to be talking about with you guys today, because you are in an incredible position where you already have a small group. But is your small group trying to be a community that is centered around God and the family that God calls us to be? Or is it centered around things that aren't as great, aren't as important? Or maybe your small group hasn't even really thought about the kind of community you want it to be. You see, there's so much evidence and there's so much just instruction in the Bible of how we are supposed to do community. And one of the people that I love to read from is Paul. Paul was a disciple of Jesus, and he wrote so many letters. And he wrote these letters to churches around the area during the early times of the church to encourage them, to criticize them if it was needed, and to call them to be better, but also to let them know what was important. And I love reading the book of Ephesians, because in Ephesians, Paul talks about the importance of community and what it looks like to have a community centered around God. And he talks about how we have to recognize that we are a group of people, that we are chosen and loved and beloved by God, that he wants each and every one of us to be there, and we need to recognize that each and every one of us have a place in God's community. But here's what I want to look at is verses 15 through 23 in Ephesians 1, because Paul is talking about this community. He's setting it up, how we are in God's community, what a blessing it is. But then he talks about what he hopes for us in this community. So in verses 15 through 23, here's what it says. For this reason, ever since I heard about your faith in the Lord Jesus and your love for all God's people, I have not stopped giving thanks for you, remembering you in my prayers. I keep asking that the God of our Lord Jesus Christ, the glorious Father, may give you the spirit of wisdom and revelation, so that you may know him better. I pray that the eyes of your heart may be enlightened in order that you may know the hope to which he has called you, the riches of his glorious inheritance in his holy people, and his incomparable great power for us who believe. That power is the same as the mighty strength he exerted when he raised Christ from the dead and seated him at his right hand in the heavenly realms, far above all rule and authority, power and dominion, and every name that is invoked, not only in the present age, but also in the one to come. And God placed all things under his feet and appointed him to be head over everything for the church, which is his body, the fullness of him who fills everything in every way. The reason I wanted to look at these verses is because Paul is talking about what he hopes we seek when we try to have a God-honoring community, what he hopes we are after and ultimately gain when we seek to have that community together. And what that is God. We need to understand that when we head into these communities, when we head into our small groups on Sunday, we should be seeking God together. And from that, when we center our community around God, around Jesus, around the relationship that they have and want with us, we can gain wisdom, we can gain understanding of God's power and what he can do and what he calls us to and what we can be capable of by knowing that. What we can do as a community when we understand who God is and who he calls us to be and how he calls us to love one another. So that is what I want for us. You see, you guys are in a unique position where you already have a God-centered community. But how are you being intentional with it? So today in small group, I really want you to be talking about with everyone there, your leaders and your friends, what that community needs to look like. What you guys need to be doing to make sure that you are the kind of Christian community that you and others can look back on and say, this community changed my life. This community built me up. This community helped me understand God, helped me understand myself, and helped me understand others. Instead of it being a community that was wasted. Instead of it being a community that you didn't feel welcome in. And we need to recognize that each and every one of us has a responsibility to build that God-honoring, God-centered community. So when you're in small group today, I want you to think through a couple of questions. Look at your small group and ask yourselves, are we the kind of group that invites others in? Not just the kind of group where we extend invitations, but when people show up, they feel welcome. They feel wanted. Are you, as your group, the kind of group that invites others in? The next is, are you the kind of group that prays and cares for each other? You don't just want to answer the questions in small group for that day, but you actually want to know how each and every one is doing and how you can support and care for one another. How you can be there for each other. The next is, how do you help each other grow closer to God? And that's not just showing up on Sundays, but how in the time that you have are you challenging one another to pursue God, to pursue who He has called you to be, and to challenge yourselves into doing better. That doesn't mean diminishing somebody and their worth, but telling them what they are capable of and encouraging them to strive for it. Are you the kind of group that is doing that? And then finally, are you the kind of group that celebrates the unique things that you and everyone else brings to that group? Because you see, this kind of community should never have an expectation of what someone should be like in order to be welcomed there, in order to belong. Because everyone is welcome. Everyone should belong. And if your group is not seeking to be intentional about celebrating everyone's uniqueness, everyone's perspective, everyone's different experience, you need to change that. So in group today, really be taking the time to be asking yourself and be honest. Be honest, guys. Is small group the kind of God-honoring community that you want it and that you need it to be? And if it's not, what do you guys need to do to change it? And if it is, how can you move that farther? How can you create this into a group that's even better? And I want you to leave small group with one thing, at least one thing you guys are going to start doing to be a better God-centered community. A community that is centered around the fact that you and everyone in that group is a part of God's family. Because you see, guys, I think we can sometimes forget how community can be one of the most influential things we can experience. And sometimes we take it for granted and realize that a community that isn't good, or a community that we don't take advantage of, is one that can hurt us. But a community that we are intentional with, a community that we build upon, is something that can build us up and change our lives. My hope for you guys is that you can have the kind of God-honoring community that even when you leave Impact, when you head into the real world, you still have, know, and love each other. All right, guys, enjoy group. All right, guys, and welcome to Ronnie and Chip Do Announcement.
We're back.
Yes, we are, once again. We have just one announcement for you this week.
Just one.
Just one.
It involves
Bible study.
It's on Wednesday.
7 to 8 p.m.
And it's in the parking lot at WSL.
Yes, it is. And make sure to bring a mask, a Bible, and a lawn chair, guys. We are going to be reading through 1st and 2nd Peter. It's going to be great.
Sounds like fun.
Don't miss it.
All right.
That's what we got for you.
We're out of here.
This is Ronnie and Chip Do Announcements.
Signing off.
Yeah, that was very succinct.
Was. All right.